When Ma Rainey comes to town, folks from any place miles around, from Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff, flocks in to hear Ma do her stuff. Comes slithering in, or riding mules, or packed in trains, picking any fools. That's what it's like for miles on down to New Orleans Delta and Mobile Town when Ma hits anywhere's around. This, the opening verse from renowned poet Sterling Brown. His homage, simply titled Ma Rainey, pays tribute to the mother of blues. She shaped multiple genres of music, from gospel to jazz to R&B, rap, and hip-hop. Her imprint is stamped on America's first original art form, a sound that would evolve and be embraced across the globe. My stage was touring tent shows in the early 1900s, customized rolling vaudeville for Black folks throughout the South and Midwest. They grabbed her music as the salve for hard times, speaking to the deepest expressions of pain and glory. Ma's talents extended far beyond the full-throated rhythms of her Black Bottom blues. Through grit and genius, she cleared a path for the likes of Mamie Smith, the first blues recording artist, and Bessie Smith, no relation but a Ma protege, who musically soared to unimagined heights. Ma's legacy gave wings to vocalists of the future, the Billies, the Ellis, the Carmens, and even the Arethas. Ma, a fearless warrior, usually held her court and could take on any man, band leader, artist, or manager. Her influence, a long arm and a high arc, also reached to younger male contemporaries, including an up-and-coming horn man named Louis Satchmo Armstrong. How can we mark Jazz Month without saluting Ma Rainey, who singularly gave birth to the music that we own, that we taste, and that we celebrate today? I'm Gwen McKinney for Unerased Black Women Speak.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Malachi. Welcome to another episode of Unerased Black Women Speak. Did you know that April is recognized as Jazz Appreciation Month? Yeah. Today, we'll get into the groove of recognizing jazz greats, but our inspired storytelling approach has us taking a few solos, improvising a bit. We'll hear voices of Black women from across the country whose offstage work keeps the jazz community swinging. We meet our first guest in the city often heralded as the birthplace of America's first true art form, New Orleans.
My name is Melissa A. Weber. I am the curator of the Hogan Archive of New Orleans Music and New Orleans Jazz, a division of Tulane University Special Collections.
Melissa, thank you for being with us today. The city of New Orleans is considered to be the birthplace of jazz music. So, for the benefit of our listeners who have never visited the city, can you describe how integral jazz music is to the fiber of daily life there?
New Orleans is so different than many other places. And in terms of the music culture, it exists, like you said, as a part of daily life. You can go out onto the street on a weekday in the middle of the afternoon and hear young Black kids playing instruments. A lot of people like to cite Congo Square as a general site because that is the place, due to Code Noir laws in Louisiana during the time of enslavement, Drumming was banned throughout the country, except in Louisiana and specifically in New Orleans, because due to the Code Noir laws in Louisiana, it enabled enslaved people to gather in Congo Square on Sundays for drumming, for dancing, for fellowship. So from all of that, you get characteristics of music that was played. Some of those characteristics include music being a way of life, not just for sitting and observing, but being a part. That's where we get the concept of crowd participation from, all the way back to the time of enslavement of African and Caribbean people. Also, polyphonic rhythms, not monophonic rhythms, but two different rhythms at the same time, making a conversation that makes sense and sounds like one.
My name is Lauren Talise, and I'm a composer, I'm a vocalist, I am a lover of the arts, literary, contemporary, fine arts, all of it. I discovered jazz at about 14 or 15 years old. I grew up in my house, I heard R&B and soul and gospel and all that stuff. My dad sings, his 12 siblings sang. And so I would hear that, but not like jazz straight ahead or contemporary in that sense. And so when my parents found out that I had, affinity for music and a talent for music, they started putting me in troops. I was singing all these songs that at the time, at 8 years old, I had no idea they were standards. So I actually knew the Great American Songbook fairly early. And then fast forward to going to the Cleveland School of the Arts, a mentor of mine named Dr. William Woods heard my voice and gave me a compilation disc with Astrud Gilberto and Chet Baker singing and Sarah Vaughan and Nina Simone and all these people. And as soon as I heard Lullaby Birdland, like that first bit, I was like, oh, this feels like home. I am so grateful to have found jazz at such an early age because it's allowed me to know what home felt like in music. It's allowed me to kind of hone my why and my purpose and not be led astray by any passing trends or fads. And I think that's something that a lot of young musicians of any instrument kind of grapple with. This is hip right now. This is what's getting all the gigs. This is what's getting me hired. I'll do that. And that has never been my path. And it's just a beautiful experience to not only be able to continue the lineage of jazz as a vocalist from all my fairy godmothers like Sarah and Nancy and Dinah and all those people, but also to carve out my own lane and to share that and pass on all the things that I've learned and studied for a while. That is enriching and fulfilling.
Melissa, tell us about the importance of your current role as curator of the Hogan Archive at Tulane University. What is included in the archive and how did it come to reside at Tulane?
What is included in archives? They are materials that reflect history, primary source materials. So not something that you can look up on the internet, do a Google search for. They're actual items that were a part of an event, whether that's a historical event or your personal life or whatever that is. They help to tell a story. And what are those materials? They include things like business papers, personal papers, diaries, photographs, oral histories, audio-visual recordings, home movies, manuscripts, because people all over the world want to know the stories around that culture, because whether you know or you don't know, the music making and music culture that comes out of New Orleans provides the basis for all of American popular music culture, all of it. It all comes from jazz. So to have archives that document those stories are important. The Hogan Archive is part of Tulane University Special Collections. For years, it was termed the Hogan Jazz Archive, and we just recently did a rebranding to rename it the Hogan Archive of New Orleans Music and New Orleans Jazz to represent everything that our collections include, which range from traditional and contemporary jazz to New Orleans brass bands, Mardi Gras Indian music, funk, soul, gospel, hip-hop culture, all of the things and all of the stories that New Orleans people contribute to the world.
My name is Farah Jasmine Griffin, and I'm a writer and professor of English and Comparative Literature and African American Studies at Columbia University. At Columbia University, I teach literature, primarily Black literature, and I teach cultural history, which includes music, Black music. I often will expose my students to people who are lesser known, who they don't know, the big names that aren't as familiar as the big names to them. So I always try to introduce them to Mary Lou Williams, who is a jazz pianist and composer and arranger and really fits within that category of kind of a jazz genius, but whose name doesn't roll off the tongue when we talk about the great jazz women of the tradition. I'll also, in the vein of Mary Lou Williams, introduce them to my friend, the late Jerry Allen, who was also a pianist, composer, Howard University graduate, went on to become a professor herself, but played in every genre, was not bound by genre at all. The next time I teach, I'll be introducing them to a new young vocalist named Samara Joy, who is only 22 years old, but remarkable.
Okay, Melissa, who are some of the women in jazz, past and present, who deserve our time and attention?
Okay. I will call the soul queen of New Orleans, Irma Thomas. She just made 80 years old or maybe 81, and she is kicking, and she is very influential in this city, and 2 documentaries have just been released about her. So Irma Thomas is one. Also a woman named Wanda Ruzan, who is a vocalist, recorded throughout. She had a popular single in the 1960s, but I like to call her name because she was New Orleans' first female grand marshal for Jazz Funeral. Also, a lot of people know about the Neville Brothers, worldwide, world-renowned musical family from New Orleans. And Charles Neville's daughter, Charmaine Neville, is a wonderful, long-standing artist and community leader in her own right.
So let's say I have an artifact of jazz history. What criteria do I need to keep in mind if I want to have it included in an archive, Melissa?
Yes, so each archives repository will have what's known as a collection development policy. Generally, the repository is going to see if it's a match. For instance, here at Tulane University Special Collections, we do not accept large items like, let's say, statues. That's more for a museum. We don't have the capacity to responsibly care for those types of materials. And then all of that is actually laid out on our website. Generally, people will not take everything just because you say, I have a thing, We want to make sure it's a good fit for both parties involved.
We meet our next guest in New York, the heartbeat of the jazz world. With a more than 20-year history in jazz radio, Kiana Faircloth knows a thing or two about what's now and what's next in the genre. Kiana, welcome to Unerased Black Women Speak. Describe for us your professional journey to your storied career as a Black woman in jazz broadcasting.
Jazz radio specifically, that started when I was a sophomore at Howard University as a music student and a music history major. at Howard in the Division of Fine Arts. I always adored WPFW and everything they stood for. And one day I just decided to walk. It must have been like 15 or 16 blocks from Howard University to Adams Morgan, where the station was at the time. I just inquired about an internship. Really about, I want to say maybe 2 weeks in as an intern, somebody didn't show up. And of course I was around, and they're like, oh, well, we need you to go fill in. I remained at PFW for 16 years.
Wow, that is incredible. Over the years, you have shared music from a broad spectrum of artists. Who are the Black women in jazz that you don't think get enough accolades? Who are the lesser known must-haves for our personal music collections?
I'm thinking of a saxophonist, and she's a composer. Her name is Yuni Mohika. And she is absolutely just phenomenal as a player and as a composer. She has composed music on Jazz Mia Horn's latest album, Dear Love. Her composition, Nia, is absolutely soul stirring. And she's one of those people who I feel is unsung. You know, you don't really hear about her that often, but you hear her music, whether you realize it or not. And not only is she an amazing musician and composer, she's also a podcast host. She hosts a podcast herself called Make Jazz Trill Again with Melanie Charles, who's another one who is, I feel like, starting to get some shine. But she herself as well is an absolutely incredible vocalist who's definitely using her platform to amplify the magic of Black women and girls. Absolutely love Christy Dashiell. Her whole family is killing. I don't know. It must have been in the water or something because she's absolutely incredible. And again, one of those people who I feel like one day is going to be a household name. But right now she's just sort of bubbling beneath the surface. But the greats are taking notice of her and recognizing who she is. So it's only a matter of time for sure.
Kiana, which Black women jazz artists inspired you to be part of this great genre of jazz music? And who continues to motivate you today?
The first woman I saw in concert perform was Rochelle Farrell. And I had to be probably, I want to say maybe 8 years old. And I was just flabbergasted, I guess, by her, how free she was and how just uninhibited. And I mean, all I knew was that she brought me great joy at 8 years old. And I think she launched a thirst for jazz for me and it made me want to delve into the music even more just by seeing and hearing her perform. Today, I would say artists like Jazz Mia Horn, like, oh my goodness, so many other women artists, India Owens, the bassist, so many young African-American women who are carrying on the torch of this music inspire me daily to want to continue to provide them with a platform so that the world will know who they are. Even you, Carolyn Malachi. I don't know that I should, I'm sure you don't want me to say that, but you inspire me so much just by your drive and your energy and everything that you do and the intensity with which you put behind everything that you do is very inspiring. So it's folks like that keep me going.
Oh, I appreciate you, Kiana. Thank you so much. For our unerased Black Women Speak listeners who don't know, I too am a musician. Sometimes I make jazz music. Kiana was one of the first to play my music. I wonder if she remembers this song. It's called Ready for the World. Here's a little bit of it.
It's
wonderful day. I'm awake and I'm ready to play all the games that life can play with me. I am ready, yes. Car keys in hand, no fear. All that I am is ready for the world. All that I am is ready for the world. Okay, one more question before you go, Kiana. Why do our listeners need to know these new names in jazz?
I think it's important for everyone to know these new names in jazz because it means that this music is continually and evolving and that there's an audience for it. You know, there was always pushback if we think of, you know, if you want to call it jazz, going back from its beginnings. It was a thing that is built on evolution, the very nature of it, the improvisation, all of that. It's always changing. And, you know, a lot of folks who, you know, call themselves purists, if you will, don't always want to see the change. They might be resistant to it. But I think it's important that we give space for the next generation of musicians of the genre to do their thing and that we support that. And so I think it's important to learn about who's new and who's next and give the space allowed for them to feel supported and like their music is landing somewhere. I think it's important that we know the names, the new names of these artists because of that.
Thanks for listening to Unerased Black Women Speak, made possible by support from the Craig Newmark Philanthropies, the Park Foundation, TD Charitable Foundation, and anonymous donors. Our theme song is Unerased by Carolyn Malachi. We had help from Joya Jefferson Nuri, Joshua Levi Perrin, recording engineer Ashley Donald, Alyssa Davis, Alex Kavoris, Jovita Hill, Rosemary Neely, Marisol Bello, coordinating producer Stephanie Renee, and social media coordinators Antoinette Miner and April McKellar Perry. Our audio producer and host is Carolyn Malachi. Gwen McKinney is our creator and executive producer. All of us at Unerased Black Women Speak invite you to tune in to our next episode. While you're there, please subscribe and visit us online at unerasedbws.com.